Hi, BookTube. Bill Ruttenberg here at the Ruttenberg Library. Wanted to do a bookshelf tour for you tonight, and so I'm back in the upper room. We've got this cleaned out quite a bit since the last time I did a video in here, so you can actually kind of see down the line a little bit. We got several books or several sets of shelves in here that I'm going to be able to show off in the next few days, and I can kind of show you a little bit more of my collection. And so I'm on this first shelf that I started with a couple days back, and it's going to be the fourth shelf. And this shelf's it's kind of a hodgepodge of this and that, and it's going to have some collectible books of stuff that I've just enjoyed from my childhood, and some new stuff that I've gotten into studying. And anyway, just wanted to share these with you. I hope you enjoy this. So let's go ahead and start the tour. So our first book on the shelf, this is a text from college, the Western Experience. This is volume 1 of the 4th edition, 2/1715. So Mortimer Chambers, Raymond Grew, David Hurley, Theodore Rabb, and Isser Wallach. And hopefully I didn't butcher those names too badly. And I apologize about the lighting. I'm doing this in the evening time. The lighting's not real great up here in this upper room. So this text was from college, and this is from Alfred A. Knopf, and it's a New York, and it is from 1987, looks like. So that's the first book on the shelf. So moving right down the line, we got a Civil War book here. Soldier's Life, 1861 to 1865. The Civil War Diaries and Reminiscences of Kendrick Wade Brown. And this is an Iowa veteran, so it was published right here in Iowa. I believe he was, let's see, citizen of Alexandria Bay, New York, and Ames, Iowa. So he's from was right here in Ames. This is a, let's see, 2004 book, and let's see, doesn't have a publisher on there. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see a publisher for this one. So next book on the shelf is called The Cold War, A Military History. It's a compilation of several different writers. They've got Stephen Ambrose, Caleb Carr, Thomas Fleming, Victor Davis Hanson, David McAuliffe, Simon Winchester, and others. Edited by Robert Coley. And so this is a compilation of short essays on the Cold War. I have not read a whole lot in this. What I did read was pretty good right at the very beginning. This is from Random House, and it is a New York book, and it is a 2006 edition, it looks like. 2006. So, alright, the next one I got on the shelf is one of those landmark biographies that we used to see when we were little kids, and some of you a lot older than me might remember these. But this one's Daniel Boone, The Opening of the Wilderness by John Mason Brown. Show that to you. So I kind of like these. I read a lot of these when I was younger. They kept me thoroughly entertained. It's Landmark Books, Random House out of New York. And this particular one is a 1952 book. And I can remember when I was younger, I went through all of these books in the library. I read every one of them I could get my hands on. And I enjoyed all of those. Those got me through a lot of tough times, a lot of interesting reads. So the next one on the shelf is The Faces of Power, Constancy and Change in United States Foreign Policy, from Truman to Reagan. And it's Siam Brown. Not sure how to say that author's name. Apologize for that. And this is a Columbia University Press. It's out of New York. And it is from the year 1983. And I bought at school they had me teach one of my high school class. They had me teach U.S. And United States and World Affairs, and it was basically a foreign policy class. And so I had ended up buying several books on U.S. foreign policy just to get myself even a little bit more familiar with the material for class. And this was one. That book on the Cold War was one. And there were several others on my shelves in here that I'd bought. Now, of course, with my luck, that class, they switched classes on me, and I ended up teaching a different class after, I think I had that for a year, a couple semesters worth, and then right after I got done buying all my books, they ended up switching my class. That's usually my luck with things. The next book on the shelf here is A United States History, The Growth of Our Land. This is an American School edition, Merle Burke, and it is American Technical Society out of Chicago. And it is a 1959 book, it looks like. And this isn't anything, super special. I got that because, being a teacher, you see some of these old textbooks, and I always think that's kind of neat to have those. Next one on the shelf is Roosevelt, the Lion and the Fox. And that I do not have a dust jacket with that. This is by James McGregor Burns, and is from Harcourt, Brace and Company out of New York, and it is a 1956 book, and, all about Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt and his rise to power when he was younger and getting into the presidency, I believe is what that's about. I have not read that. A lot of these I haven't read. Most of the ones that I've read in the upper room up here are in the back end of things, because when we had all the stuff in here for storage, I kind of buried the ones I'd already read so I could get to the ones I hadn't read. That was the idea behind it. I'm not sure if that was a good idea or not, because I found myself wanting to get to the books that I had already read. So, oh well, it was worth the thought anyway. So the next book on the list here, or on the shelf, is The Liberation of the Nazi Concentration Camps, 1945. This is eyewitness accounts of the liberators. And I don't have a dust jacket with this. Let's see here. This is United States Holocaust Memorial Council out of Washington, D.C., 1987. And it is edited by Brewster Chamberlain and Marcia Feldman, with an introduction by Robert H. Abzug. And like I said, it's got a lot of different accounts in it. So this is a good primary source material. Next one I got is The Fabulous Onassis, His Life and Loves by Christian Kafarkas. Hopefully I got that right, or I was at least close. And there's a picture of the author. Of course, Onassis is the one that married Jacqueline Kennedy after John F. Kennedy was assassinated. This is from William Morrow and Company Incorporated out of New York. And it is a 1972 book. And I actually picked up, I don't even remember where I picked them up, but I picked up several things on Jackie Kennedy and Onassis at one time. And there was a whole collection of them, and I picked them up for real cheap, and I just haven't gotten around to reading them. A lot of times my reading, it consists of stuff that I'm teaching in the classroom, and the Kennedy stuff doesn't usually match up with the material that I'm covering in class, just because my class doesn't cover that. Not that it's not important, it's important, but it just doesn't cover that. But anyway, next book on the shelf is Brother Against Brother, The Lost Civil War Diary of Lieutenant Edmund Halsey, edited by Bruce Chadwick. This was one of Bruce Chadwick's first books that he helped put together. I've been excited to read this. Haven't got to it yet. I've read most of his other books, but haven't got to this one. It is, let's see, a Birch Lane Press book published by Carroll Publishing Group, and it is a 1997 book. And I like Bruce Chadwick. Of course, he's only the editor in this one, but I like his works that he writes. I think they flow real good, real well. All right, next book is Free as a Running Fox by T.D. Cownan. There's that book there. And this is a, let's see, The Dial Press, New York, 1970. And I'm going to take it, is this a World War II? Let's see. I think this is a World War II. Yep, it's a World War II book on World War II. Now, next couple are the Robert Caro biographies. Two of the biographies that he wrote on Lyndon Johnson. So this one is The Years of Lyndon Johnson, The Path to Power. Big old paperback. It's in pretty good condition, I think. Got that one from, I believe, from Wiseman's. That's where I ended up picking that up from. This is a vintage book out of New York, and of course this is volume 1 of the series, and it is, let's see, 1990 is when this edition was printed. And then the next one by Robert Caro is The Years of Lyndon Johnson, The Means of Ascent. And this is a hardback, but it's out of that same set of biographies. I can't remember how many there were in that set. 4 or 5, something like that, I think, anyway. Comes from Alfred A. Knopf out of New York, 1990. And Andrew B. did a series of videos on these, on this set of biographies that was really interesting. He did a really nice job with those, and I'd recommend going and watching those videos. It was pretty interesting. I'll try to remember to put some links down, because I found that fascinating, what he had to say. The 4th of July and the Founding of America by Peter de Bola. Kind of a neat book. Picked it up on the cheap. And of course I teach 4th of July in my 8th grade class. We talk about the Revolution and everything. So this is an Overlook Press, Woodstock in New York, and it is a 2008 book. And look forward to that. It's pretty short book. Shouldn't take very long to get through it. Next one is a hardback that's pretty beat up. This is John Adams in the American Revolution, and this is by I think it's Catherine. We've double checked to make sure. Catherine Drinker Bowen. All right, and I don't have a dust jacket for this one. As you can see, it's very, very beat up. This was a copy out of the school library that obviously has seen better days, but it was an Atlantic Monthly Press book, Little Brown and Company out of Boston, 1950. Okay, she is one of the classic biographers of the American Revolution. She's done several different books on the Founding Fathers. All right, so now these next few get into some of my interests. This one is, and I was just showing my youngest daughter this one this morning. It's just a Hot Wheels book on Hot Wheels, the cars, by Michael Zarnick. And basically, it's the second edition. Basically, it has, if you flip through, it's every car that was ever made through Hot Wheels. And that was when I was younger. We didn't have a lot of money, and that was always something that my dad could buy for me and my little brother that was fairly affordable. And we had a lot of Hot Wheels, a lot of them. Of course, you could always find them at garage sales and everything. And so as I've gotten older, I've started collecting them again. And of course, I got both of my daughters to play with them, and we've had a lot of fun doing that, and now I've become, I don't want to call myself a collector because my wife would not allow me to get them displayed at this point, but I do have a box full of Hot Wheels that I've found because I'll buy them new, or I find them at garage sales and stuff, and I'll pick them up for cheap at the garage sales. But I wanted to kind of get a idea of how was I doing on my collection. You know, do I have a bunch of the old ones or not? Needless to say, I don't have a bunch of the old ones. But anyway, that was kind of a neat one. And then as I got to studying genealogy, I really got into looking at tombstones and death records and birth records and all that kind of stuff. And so I have several books here, or a handful of books here, on cemeteries. And it's kind of neat. This one's Stories in Stone, a field guide to cemetery symbolism and iconography, written and photographed by Douglas Keister. And this is a really neat book, and I've actually enjoyed all of these books I'm going to show you. I've read all of these. But this one has, you know, it's got a whole bunch of nice photography of the old cemeteries and what the symbols mean and all that stuff. And when I was at school, we used to have a cemetery unit that we did. It was a interdisciplinary unit that we did with. I would do history of cemeteries and just you know, how did people get to the cemetery, like different diseases that it went through and stuff like that, and of course family histories. And then science would look at diseases in a little bit more detail, and then the English department would take the epitaphs and stuff and the writing that's on the tombstones, and the math department would do all the calculations with averages of you know, deaths, you know, how old were they and how many were they and what decades did they die. Anyway, we had a really cool unit that we used to do, and so I've got all these books on this that I got for that and for my own genealogy research, and I've always enjoyed learning about it. Here is The American Resting Place, 400 Years of History Through Our Cemeteries and Burial Grounds by Marilyn Yalom, photographs by Reed Yalom. And this is let's see if I can find it. Where's the title page? Here we go. It is a Houghton Mifflin company out of Boston and New York, 2008, and it's got some really cool photos in it as well. Different examples of just throughout history, how are people put into the ground, or not even necessarily in the ground, but what happens to their bodies when they die. You know, you got some cemeteries that don't allow stones, that the stone, it has to be flat. You got some of them that have got the big elaborate stones. You got some of them that get put they get burned and put into a urn and stuck in a wall. You've got, I mean, there's just all kinds of different methods of things they do when you die, and this covers it. Pretty interesting. This one is the Old Stone and Brass Rubbing Kit, preserving epitaphs and art form from the historical graves and monuments. And this was a really neat book because I really got into doing that, taking paper and a crayon or something and rubbing on the paper and getting whatever's on the stone copied onto the papers. It was pretty cool. But this is by Jackie Sack, rubbings by Cassandra Davidson, and it's got a bunch of how-tos and how to do the tombstone rubbings and stuff like that. And it also talks about not only the do's but the don'ts, you know, so you don't tear up the stone. Don't want that. We want to preserve history. This one is Your Guide to Cemetery Research by Sharon DeBartolo Carmack, and she's got a bunch of genealogy books out. Fabulous stuff. I've read several of these books, and in another bookshelf tour I'll show you the rest of my collection on genealogy, because I've got a ton of stuff. Let's see, this is from Better Way Books out of Cincinnati, Ohio, the Family Tree magazine, which I used to subscribe to, and this is a 2002 book. This was an excellent read, had a lot of very interesting and helpful information in it. All right, so we got, once you're in the cemetery, what those tombstones, you know, what they look like and stuff like that. Here's how to get to the cemetery. This is a book on disease, the extraordinary stories behind history's deadliest killers by Mary Dobson. And so this was kind of a coffee table type book, pretty neat, I think. And it just basically goes through history on the different diseases that swept through Earth, planet Earth. This is from Kirkus, and it is a does not have a date. It's fairly recent. Oh, here it is. 2007. They had it in the back. It's out of London. It's from 2007. But this has got great photography and different stories on the different diseases that swept through our planet. And now the last one, because this last thing over here is all magazines. So the last one is another collector's guide. I was a G.I. Joe nut when I was back in the late 80s, when I was, well, I've been 8, 9, 10 years old. I was a G.I. Joe nut. And so I've got the ultimate guide to G.I. Joe. And it covers the toys from 1982 to 1994, identification and price guide by Mark Bellamo, second edition. This is wonderful. I love it. And again, I'm kind of nerding out here, but it's got every one of the figures and the vehicles and stuff like that were made for G.I. Joe during that time period. And it's got the stories behind it, and how did it follow the comic book and the cartoon or not. And anyway, this was kind of a turn back the clock book for me, and I absolutely loved it. I got to share this one with my daughters this morning. So anyway, it's from Cross Publications, and it is a 2009 book, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this one. I would recommend that. Anyway, this is the fourth shelf in the upper room. On the first set of bookshelves, or bookcase, excuse me. This has been my bookshelf tour. I hope you've enjoyed. I'm going to do another one here real fast, and hopefully you can stay with me, and hopefully you stayed through this whole video. Sorry it took so long, and sorry about the lighting. But anyway, I've enjoyed this. I hope you have. Have a good day, BookTube.